I didn't expect the moment to change anything. It was just another second in an ordinary day. Noise around us, people moving, time doing what it always does, rushing past without asking permission. And then she said something. Simple, quiet, almost weightless. And everything inside me stopped. Not the world. The world kept going. Cars passed. Voices carried on. Somewhere someone laughed. But in my chest, in my mind, there was this sudden stillness, like I had stepped into a space between heartbeats, like time looked at me and decided to wait. I didn't know what to say, not because there were no words, but because none of them felt big enough. You ever feel that? When a single sentence hits deeper than all the conversations you've ever had. When it doesn't just reach your ears, it reaches the part of you that you didn't even know was listening. That's where I was. Frozen. Not in fear, not in confusion. Just caught in the truth of that moment. I remember the exact second, not because it was loud, not because it demanded attention, but because it didn't. It arrived quietly, like most important things do. No warning, no dramatic music. Just her voice, existing in the middle of an ordinary moment, saying something so simple that anyone else might have missed it. But I didn't miss it. I couldn't. My mind tried to move forward, tried to respond the way we always do in conversations, but something inside me pressed pause. Not gently, completely. You ever notice how life is always pushing you, always telling you to react faster, think faster, speak faster? We get so used to motion that stillness feels unnatural. But that day, stillness was the only thing I could feel. Her words didn't echo, they settled, they sank somewhere deeper than sound, deeper than logic, into a place that doesn't care about explanations. I froze, not because I was nervous, not because I didn't understand. I froze because, for the first time in a long time, I understood too much all at once. Every wall you build to keep yourself moving, to keep yourself safe, suddenly becomes visible when someone says something real. And she did. She didn't try to impress me. She didn't try to make the moment special. She just spoke honestly, like it was the easiest thing in the world. And that honesty hit harder than anything complicated ever could. People think love is fireworks, grand gestures, perfectly timed words. But that's not how it happens. It happens in these small collisions with truth, in sentences that don't try to be memorable, but become unforgettable anyway. I stood there looking at her, realizing that my usual defenses, the humor, the distractions, the habit of staying one step removed from what I feel, weren't working anymore. They didn't disappear. They just didn't matter. Time kept moving. I could see it happening. The world didn't care that mine had shifted slightly off its axis. Someone walked past us. A car door closed somewhere. The sky didn't change color. Nothing announced that this was a moment worth remembering. He announced that this was a moment worth remembering. But inside me, everything rearranged itself without asking permission. I wanted to respond. I really did. I searched for something clever, something meaningful, something equal to what she had just given me without even trying. But the truth is, when something is real enough, words feel smaller than they should. So I stayed there, caught between wanting to speak and not wanting to break whatever had just formed in the silence between us. And that silence wasn't empty. It was full. Full of recognition, full of questions I hadn't asked myself before, full of the strange realization that sometimes another person can see you more clearly in a moment than you've seen yourself in years. That's terrifying and beautiful. That's terrifying and beautiful, mostly terrifying. We spend so much of our lives pretending we're in control, choosing what to show, choosing what to hide. But love, real love, doesn't ask what you plan. It shows up uninvited and says, "This is who you are when you stop running." It says the ties what you plan. It shows up uninvited and says, and I think that's why I froze, because running had always been easier. Movement is easy. Stillness makes you look at things. I looked at her, and I realized she wasn't waiting for some perfect answer. She wasn't measuring my reaction. Buds, Buds measuring my reaction. Buds measuring my reaction. Buds measuring my reaction. Buds measuring my reactions. She had already given what she meant to give. The moment wasn't a test. It was an opening. And I didn't know how to step into it yet. Not gracefully. Not confidently. Just honestly. Which is harder than it sounds. Which is harder than it sounds. Disrupt. There's a kind of vulnerability in not knowing what to say and allowing that to be seen. Most of us rush to fill gaps. We patch silence like it's damage. But this silence felt like something alive, something breathing, something asking me to stay instead of escape into noise. Something breathing, something asking me to stay instead of escape into noise. So I stayed there, feeling the weight of something new settling into a life that had been carefully arranged to avoid exactly this kind of disruption, aware of my heartbeat, aware of the way a single sentence had managed to slow everything down, just aware that this was the kind of moment you don't control, you don't master, you don't even fully understand. You just stand in it, unprepared and human, realizing that sometimes the most powerful thing someone can give you isn't an explanation or a promise or a grand declaration, but a few honest words that reach you before you have time to protect yourself, before you can turn them into something safer, before you can pretend they didn't change anything. And in that space, you find yourself not moving forward, not stepping back, in stepping back, just existing there with the strange awareness that something inside you has already begun to shift, even if you don't yet know what to call it. Even if you're still searching for breath, still searching for language, still searching for language. Still standing in that quiet place where her voice lingers and the world continues around you, and you realize you are no longer reacting to life the way you did just a moment ago, and maybe you never will again, and you're not sure whether to be afraid of that or grateful for it, and you remain there, suspended between who you were and who this moment is asking you to become. Listening to the echo of something simple that refuses to fade, feeling time move again, but differently now, slower, heavier, more deliberate, as if every second is waiting to see what you will do with what you just heard, as if even your next breath matters more than the last, as if the pause itself is trying to teach you something you haven't yet learned how to hear. There's a strange weight to simple words. Not heavy in the way problems are heavy, not loud, not demanding, just present, like they arrive and decide to stay without asking where they should sit. That's what her words did. They didn't crash into me. They rested there, calm and certain, like they knew they belonged. We're used to complexity. We trust things more when they're complicated, when they come with explanations and layers and reasons we can analyze. It makes us feel prepared, safe, but when something is simple, truly simple, it bypasses all of that. There's nothing to solve, nothing to decode. You either feel it or you don't. And feeling it is what unsettles you. This. I kept replaying what she said in my mind, not because I didn't understand it the first time, but because I did. Every repetition felt the same. No hidden meaning appeared. No clever interpretation changed it. It stayed honest, direct, unprotected. And that kind of honesty is rare enough that when you meet it, you don't know how to handle it. It's easier to respond to something dramatic. You can chitch energy with energy. You can perform. But how do you answer something quiet that comes from a real place? You can't overpower it. Comes from a real place. You can't overpower it. And it's not, you can't redirect it. You just have to face it. And facing something real means you don't get to hide behind the version of yourself you usually show the world. I realized, standing there, that most conversations are exchanges. We trade thoughts, jokes, observations. Back and forth, balanced, predictable. But this wasn't an exchange, it was a gift. And gifts can be difficult, because accepting them means acknowledging their value. It means admitting that something mattered enough to affect you. There's vulnerability in that. Not the dramatic kind people talk about, the quiet kind, the kind where no one else even notices anything happen, but inside, something shifts its position. You start asking yourself questions you didn't ask before. Why did that mean so much? Why now? Why her voice, her timing, her presence? Maybe it's because truth has a way of arriving when you've stopped expecting it, when you're busy being who you think you're supposed to be, moving through routines, keeping everything organized and manageable. Then suddenly, a moment steps in and reminds you that life isn't meant to be managed all the time. Some parts of it are meant to be felt without preparation. I looked at her, trying to see if she understood what she had done. She didn't look like someone who had just changed the atmosphere of a moment. She looked normal, calm, like she had simply said what was on her mind and trusted it to be enough. And that trust, that lack of performance, made it even more powerful. We spend so much effort trying to say the right thing, rehearsing, adjusting, filtering ourselves so we won't be misunderstood. But she didn't filter. She didn't polish the sentence into something impressive. She let it be human. And in doing that, she gave me permission to be human too, though I didn't yet know how to step into that permission. The weight I felt wasn't pressure, it was presence. Like the moment was asking me to slow down and actually live inside it, instead of rushing past it. And slowing down is uncomfortable when you're used to constant motion. You start noticing details, the sound of breathing, the space between thoughts, the way emotions don't follow neat timelines. I realized that love doesn't always announce itself as love. Sometimes it shows up as clarity, st- as a sentence that removes all the noise you didn't even know was there. Suddenly, things that felt complicated seem not simple, but understandable, not solved, but real. And reality, when it's shared between two people without pretense, carries a kind of gravity. You don't escape it by making a joke. You don't dilute it by changing the subject. You stand there, aware that something meaningful is unfolding in the most unremarkable setting imaginable. That's the paradox. The biggest emotional moments rarely look big from the outside. They hide inside ordinary minutes. No audience. No audience. No soundtrack. Just two people existing in the same space. One of them speaking honestly, the other realizing that honesty is more powerful than anything rehearsed. I could feel my usual instincts trying to return. Say something clever. Say something clever. Just restore balance. Turn the moment into something lighter, so it wouldn't feel so intense. But another part of me resisted. That part wanted to understand what it meant to stay, to not rush, to allow the weight of her words to remain exactly as they were without trying to reshape them into something easier to carry. Because maybe they weren't meant to be carried away at all. Maybe they were meant to stay there between us, changing the way we stood, the way we looked at each other, the way silence no longer felt like an absence, but like a shack. Read, read acknowledgement that something honest had entered the room, and neither of us needed to decorate it to make it matter. And I found myself breathing a little slower, listening a little more carefully, aware that this was what it felt like to stop measuring time and start experiencing it. To let a moment expand instead of rushing it toward the next one. To recognize that sometimes a few unguarded words can hold more meaning than hours of conversation. And that meaning doesn't demand an answer right away. It just asks you to remain there long enough to feel it fully, long enough to let it settle into who you are becoming, long enough to understand that not every important experience arrives with instructions. Some just arrive and wait for you to notice that you are different now, even if you haven't yet figured out how to explain why. Even if you haven't yet figured out how to explain why. Even if you're still standing in that quiet realization, letting the simplicity of what she said continue to echo in ways that don't grow louder, but grow deeper, spreading through your thoughts, your awareness, your sense of connection to the person in front of you, your sense of connection to the person in front of you, until you begin to understand that the weight of those words isn't something to resist, but something to accept something to stand within without trying to escape, something that asks nothing more than your presence and your willingness to remain honest in return. Even if honesty feels unfamiliar, even if it takes time to answer, even if the only thing you can do at first is stay there, feeling the meaning unfold, one silent second at a time, allowing it to become part of you before you try to turn it into language, before you try to define it, before you risk reducing it into something smaller than what it is still becoming, still moving, still quietly reshaping the space between you and her without asking for recognition or permission or conclusion, just continuing to exist. It's the sin, that shared stillness that began with a single sentence and hasn't yet finished saying what it came to say, still holding you there, attentive, present, listening for what comes next without trying to force it into form, without trying to rush the experience into something complete. Because it isn't complete yet, it's still unfolding, still asking you to remain, still asking you to feel, still asking you to understand without needing to speak. And you let it continue, unfinished, open, alive in the space between one heartbeat and the next, waiting without impatience, open, alive in the space between one heartbeat and the next, waiting without impatience, open to the present without demand, becoming something you will carry forward, even as you stand there now, not moving away, not closing the moment, just allowing it to continue exactly as it is, without end, without summary, without stepping out of it too soon, staying with it as it keeps revealing itself slowly, quietly, endlessly, like an answer that isn't meant to arrive all at once but to be lived into, breath by breath, awareness by awareness, staying there with it, still listening, still feeling, still learning what those simple words set in motion, still discovering how something so small could open something so vast, and remaining inside that discovery without trying to finish it, without trying to step beyond it, just letting it continue to unfold, to resonate, and remaining inside that discovery without trying to step beyond it, to exist in that suspended space where meaning keeps deepening, and you keep standing there, present, aware, and not yet ready to leave that moment behind. I don't know when life decided to take everything from me. Maybe it happened slowly, in the quiet moments no one notices. Maybe it happened all at once, like the world just exhaled and forgot to let me breathe again. There was a time when I thought I understood what it meant to have something, a purpose, a direction, a place to belong. But loss has a strange way of rewriting your story without asking permission. It leaves you standing in the middle of your own life, looking at empty hands, wondering how they got that way. And yet, even in that emptiness, there's a space that wasn't meant to stay hollow forever. This speech is for you, the woman I haven't met yet, the one who will walk into a life that looks broken from the outside, but is still waiting, still believing, still holding on to the idea that love can arrive when everything else is gone. Because sometimes, losing everything isn't the end of the story. Sometimes it's where the real one begins. I remember the moment life became quiet. Not peaceful quiet, not the kind of silence you choose when you want to rest. It was the kind of quiet that comes after something has been taken away, the kind that makes the world feel larger than it should, colder than it should, like you're walking through rooms that still exist but no longer belong to you. I didn't lose everything in a single day. It happened piece by piece. Plans faded, people changed. Dreams I once carried with certainty slowly slipped through my hands, until I stopped trying to hold them. You learn strange lessons when that happens. You learn how loud memories can be. You learn how heavy empty space can feel. You learn that strength is not loud or impressive. Sometimes strength is just waking up, breathing in, and deciding to keep going without knowing why. There were days I walked forward without direction, not chasing anything, not expecting anything, just moving because standing still felt worse. I stopped asking life for answers. I stopped expecting fairness. I stopped believing that things happen for a reason. Loss doesn't always teach you wisdom. Sometimes it just leaves scars and calls it experience. But even then, somewhere underneath all of that, something refused to disappear. I didn't notice it at first. It was small, quiet, persistent, like a light you only see when everything else is dark. The ability to care, the ability to imagine that somewhere, someday, Someone would see me not as what I lost, but as what remained. I don't know who you are yet. I don't know where you are, what you've been through, what kind of days shaped you into the person you've become. Maybe life hasn't been gentle with you either. Maybe you also know what it means to rebuild yourself in ways no one else can see. What I do know is that before you, I learned how to survive. I learned how to stand with no applause, no reassurance, no guarantees. And survival changes a person. It removes the unnecessary. It burns away illusions. It leaves behind something honest, something unpolished but real. If I had never lost everything, I might have met you differently. I might have been distracted. I might have taken you for granted. I might have been too full of noise to recognize the calm you bring. But now, there is space. Space to listen. Space to understand. Space to value the way you laugh. The way you pause when you think. The way you exist without trying to prove anything. When you've known emptiness, you don't fall in love with appearances. You fall in love with presence. With someone staying. With someone choosing, again and again, to walk beside you without needing a reason. I won't come to you as someone who has it all figured out. I won't pretend to have perfect answers or an unbroken past. What I will bring is honesty, the kind that doesn't disappear when things get hard. Because I've already seen hard. I've already stood in places where giving up would have been easier. And I didn't. Not because I was strong, but because something in me believed there was still a chapter left unwritten. A chapter that didn't look like loss. A chapter that didn't feel like endings. A chapter that sounded like two footsteps instead of one. Loving you won't be about filling a void. It will be about recognizing something familiar. Like finding warmth after years of cold. Not overwhelming, not sudden, but steady. Real. The kind of love that doesn't need grand promises. Just shared mornings. Quiet conversations. Knowing glances. The understanding that we are both here, not because life was easy, but because we chose to keep going long enough to find each other. And in that choice, in that persistence, there is something stronger than anything we lost. There was a time I believed pain was something to avoid, something that meant you were going in the wrong direction. I used to think that if life hurt, you were failing at it, but losing everything changed that understanding. Pain didn't ask for permission. It arrived, stayed, and slowly rearranged the way I saw the world. It stripped away certainty. It took away the idea that tomorrow is promised. It forced me to look at myself, without the distractions, without the noise, without the things I once used to define who I was. At first it felt like destruction, like standing in the aftermath of something that could never be rebuilt. You look around, and nothing seems familiar, not even yourself. The person you were before doesn't quite exist anymore, and the person you are becoming hasn't fully formed. You exist somewhere in between, in a space that feels uncertain and unfinished. That space is uncomfortable. It's lonely. It tests your patience in ways nothing else can. But over time, I realized that space wasn't empty. It was being prepared. Prepared for someone who wouldn't need the old version of me. Someone who wouldn't have connected with the life I thought I wanted. The loss made room for honesty. It made room for humility. It made room for understanding that love isn't about having everything together. It's about being willing to stand beside another person while you're both still figuring things out. If I had never gone through that breaking, I might never have learned how to truly see another human being, not for what they represent, but for who they are in their quiet, ordinary, extraordinary existence. Pain slowed me down. It taught me to notice things I once ignored. The way time passes differently when you're not chasing it. The way small moments carry more meaning than big achievements. The way a simple conversation can feel more valuable than years of ambition. It reshaped my priorities without asking, without negotiating. And somewhere in that reshaping, it carved out a place that didn't belong to my past, didn't belong to my losses, but belonged to something that hadn't arrived yet. You. Not as an answer, not as a rescue, but as someone who would step into that space naturally, without force, without expectation. Someone who wouldn't try to fix what was broken, because it was never about fixing. It was about understanding. About accepting that everything that hurt, everything that disappeared, everything that changed me, was also quietly guiding me toward a connection built on something deeper than convenience or timing. I stopped asking why things were taken away. I started asking what remained. And what remained was the ability to care, the willingness to trust again, the quiet hope that someday I would meet a person who understood that love is not built in perfect moments, but in the ones where you choose not to walk away. The pain didn't close my heart. It reshaped it, made it less naive, maybe, but more open in a way that is deliberate, conscious, and real.